station that we think is great, and the place on your dial is 208. All the DJs are friendly and you know them by name, and to entertain the world is their only aim. They call it Radio Luxembourg. 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 Keep on listening, baby. Radio Luxembourg.
Well, I've already promised you we'll be talking to Jimmy this morning, our old friend and colleague on Radio Luxembourg, the guy who started his own career on this station. And, have you got him on the phone now, Mark? No. Okay, we're now going to phone Jimmy, because we've got Jimmy's phone number. He got through on the wrong line. Because I must say this, although I was the first disc jockey in the world to put a microphone under Elvis's mouth in Las Vegas, I remember as a youngster, the phone's ringing, I remember as a youngster being a fan of Radio Luxembourg, and I remember seeing a photograph in many, many publications with Jimmy Savile standing next to Elvis. Jimmy Savile was the first British or European disc jockey to ever meet Elvis Presley. And, of course, I know Jimmy loved Elvis as much as I do. Hello? Jimmy, hold on. I'm going to put you through in 1 minute. We've got Jimmy Savile on the line. He'll be talking to the world in just a moment.
Radio Luxembourg.
Well, I can assure you that at this very moment I have Jimmy Savile on the telephone line. He's in Leeds, his hometown, and he is desperately destitute, as we all are tonight, and I'll be talking to Jimmy in just a moment. But first of all, we have the news here on Radio Luxembourg from the Daily Mirror news desk in London, and we have purely one item in the news. The king of rock and roll is dead. Elvis Presley, the legendary king of rock and roll, is dead. He was 42. Death came suddenly to the Mississippi boy who became the top-selling star of the century. He was found unconscious at his luxury home by his road manager, Joe Esposito. He was rushed to the nearby Memphis Baptist Hospital, but he never recovered consciousness. The cause of death was said to be respiratory failure, but there will be a post-mortem. He'd been treated at the hospital for a liver complaint, eye failure, and addiction to amphetamines and heroin. Elvis was born a twin, but the other boy did not survive. He first heard music at the Assembly of God Church in East Tupelo, Tennessee. Years later, Elvis admitted his debt to the preachers at the church. He said, "They cut up all over the place, man, jumping on the piano and moving every which way." Elvis said the audience liked them, and he learned from them. Elvis taught himself to play a 7-pound guitar when he was 12, but it was not until 1954, when he was 23, that he cut a demonstration disc called That's All Right Mama, and he was on his way to stardom. Hits like Hound Dog, Don't Be Cruel, All Shuck Up, and It's Now or Never followed. No one really knows how much money he made in his career, but his generosity was unquestioned. The legends soon grew up around him when he hit the top. He'd collect Rolls Royces, Cadillacs and Lincolns, then give them away sometimes to complete strangers. When he gave a concert in Colorado 3 years ago, he handed out a dozen cars worth about £8,000 each to newsmen and police. The Beatles went ahead of him in sales in the 60s, but Presley still stayed at the top of the pop business. It is estimated that sales of his records topped 500 million. A final word from Todd Slaughter, secretary of the 12,000-strong Elvis Presley fan club in Great Britain, and I quote, "I am heartbroken, and I am particularly grief-stricken for all his fans here who have followed him over the years. He was a part of their lives. Many fans dedicate their entire lives to following him and collecting Elvis records, books, posters, and memorabilia. The roots of pop music have been taken away. He was the man who started it all." End of quote. Later this morning, Todd Slaughter, I hope, will be talking to you on Luxembourg.
And you can tell everybody the station is great. I'm talking about the one and only 208.
I'd like to welcome to Radio Luxembourg, for the first time in quite a long time, Jimmy Savile. Are you there, Jim?
Yes, can you hear me?
Very, very clearly, Jimmy.
Good.
Just like you're talking from Leeds.
Good, exactly.
Well, the first question, Jim, is how are you feeling?
Well, very low at the moment, because we're all living through a global disaster at this particular time, because you can say many things about Elvis, you can say many things about the King, but the big thing was that he was amongst a small band of people who actually brought pleasure to other people. He didn't bring political news, he didn't bring unfortunate news, he brought pleasure, and people who bring pleasure are few and far between. And with Elvis, he had got this unbelievable legion of, I wouldn't use the word fans, I would use the words very close people. You didn't really feel a fan of Elvis, you felt very, very close to him, and that brought you very close to all the other people that liked his music, that joined the fan club. And at a time like this, it's a global disaster, because some people should never ever die, particularly those who bring pleasure to others, and they just leave a great big hole in this world that nothing can fill. A king dies, but a king never dies. We all know that Elvis's music and his voice will be going on in all of our hearts and on all of our record players for as long as we're alive. But he's gone, and like I say, people who bring happiness to other people, they shouldn't die, they should just be alive for 500 years each.
Jimmy, do you think Elvis Presley, in retrospect, had a happy life himself?
Yes, I think he did, actually, because when you get as big as El got, you get legends, you get stories that aren't true, you get people trying to bring him down, you get all these things.
Mm-hmm.
For those of us who were lucky enough to meet up with him, I think we can all feel that he realised he was a very lucky guy, because part of him was always a truck driver, and part of him always remembered those days, and part of him realised how lucky he was, and he enjoyed and revelled in his music. And when he was bringing the joy to people that he was, it used to knock him out sideways. And the times that I spoke to him, I was over there half a dozen times, and every time that I spoke to him, it was a quiet appreciation of what was going on. And one of Elvis's problems was that he wanted to spread himself all over the world in person. It's physically impossible. Any pop star will tell you it's physically impossible to be in all the places that you want to be, and it's physically impossible to meet all the wonderful friends and fans that you've got that you want to meet, and that is a tragedy, and that would be the only tragedy in Elvis's life, that he didn't actually get round to meeting everybody that he wanted to do individually.
Do you think, Jimmy, that he really intended one day, as he said to me, and maybe yourself too, to come over to Britain, to his loyal fans in Europe? He said that to me. I've got it on a tape recording. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me tonight. I'd love to have played it, but I'm sure he said that to you as well. Do you think he really intended to come over here and perform?
Well, even more so than that. First of all, he did. First of all, it never occurred to him, or the Colonel, that they would never play England. It never occurred to them that they would never play England. Dates, times, one day following the other, that was the snag. For years and months and weeks, they all run away with you. But the last time I spoke to the Colonel and Elvis, they were actually making tentative plans about an English visit, and the Colonel said to me, you've got to be there, of course. And I said, I don't think you've got that much money, Colonel. And the Colonel and I were great leg pullers.
Yes.
He was a great, as you know, a great practical joker. Maybe a lot of the listeners don't realise what an enormous practical joker he was. And with me as his straight man, we played jokes on his wife, we played jokes on colleague millionaires and things like that. And I would be very serious when I spoke to the Colonel. And when he said, you've got to be there for the show, you see, and I said, no, I don't think you've got enough money, Colonel.
Jimmy, let me just interject. I remember the first year I went with Todd Slaughter, and I spent about 3 hours with the Colonel up on the second floor of the Hilton. And I came away, and I said to Todd Slaughter, "Do you know the only guy in the world I can equate Colonel Parker to?" And he said, "Who?" I said, "Jimmy Savile." You two are like a mirrored image of each other.
Yeah, I know. We got to tell you what, the very first time that I got there, I went over to America long before anybody else was. I mean, you were still at school when I went over there, Tone.
You're dead right.
You're only about 23 now, I think.
You're kind.
I got to Hollywood with 2 gold records under my arm for sales of It's Now or Never. And it sold 1,286,000 copies. It's a figure I'll never forget. And I had no appointment. All I had was a phone number. And I phoned up this number, and I finished up on a set in Paramount Studios. And I was about 40 minutes late, because I've been with the Everly Brothers just before, and they were rival recording studios, of course, even though they came out under the same label in this country. And when they realised I was going to see Elvis, they sort of kept me hanging on and hanging back and all that sort of stuff. And I was about 40 minutes late, and the Colonel said, "You the guy from England?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "You're late." I said, "I know it's 6,000 miles, and the traffic was a bit busy over the last 500 yards, you see." And when the Colonel realised I was chipping back at him like that, he said, "Stay with me." And I stayed with him for 2 weeks.
You're one of us.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what I would like to do sooner than appear to be getting on any sort of bandwagon, it just so happens that I actually heard the news tonight, first on Radio Luxembourg. I was driving back from eating, and it's one of those things that you pull into the side of the road because you just don't believe it, man. And I'm hoping all the time that you've definitely got wrong news. And I know it would have been a disaster for 208 if you had got wrong news, but I was hoping and praying that you had, but you hadn't. So no way when I got back here could I not just phone up, because at this moment we all want to be close together, all the friends and fans and people who never even met Al, but who just dig him like he was a brother. And we're all very close together at this time of night. And all I can say is, like I said at the start, people like Al shouldn't die, because when you look at Al's life, all he did was bring pleasure to millions of people, and there are so few people like that in the world that they should all live to be 500 years old. And he's gone. What we're going to do, I don't know, but it's just one of those global disasters, and it really is a global disaster. It's all right, anybody who might be listening to the station now thinking, what a fuss over a singer. I got news for you, baby, it's not like that at all, because you can take all the politicians in the world, you can take all the political type people in the world, you can wrap them all in a bag, and you can put them on one side. Elvis and people like Elvis, there's not many of them, but people like Elvis, they bring pleasure to people, and they are vital, valuable, and shouldn't go, and that's just the way it is. It's a global disaster.
Yes, it is. Apart from anything else, Jim, I think the very important aspect about Elvis's fame is what you said earlier on, that he was a truck driver. And rather like people today filling in the football pools and hoping that at the weekend they'll win that £500,000, you could also get together with the idea that, well, I can also join the pop business and become an Elvis Presley. And he was the epitome of that idea, that in the society we live in, a truck driver can become a millionaire purely by working, right?
Sure, but can you imagine how many young guys that Al has enthused, that Al has given instruments to? In other words, they've gone out and they've bought their £7 guitars, and they have practiced, and they have stood in front of the mirror, and they've gyrated and tried to sing songs like El. For that period of their life, El had given them a new meaning to their life, and had given them a new hope and a new chance. Some of them actually made it. I mean, how many pop stars that have actually made the big time because of being figured off by El? This is the point I'm making, you see. This is why he's so valuable. He's not just a singer, and he's not just an artist, and we're not being maudlin over things like this. People like El were and still are very, very valuable, and people who enthuse other people, people who bring people away from violence, they bring them away from all the useless things of life, and they bring them into a music situation. People might think that music is not very important. Music is a way of life, and it brings happiness to people, and those who bring happiness to others, first of all, they have it in their own lives, which is why we said that Elvis had this wonderful feeling that he knew that all the people he'd never meet, he was responsible for their happiness, and this gave him a wonderful G. And if anybody ever looked at anybody who'd had a good life and who died and went to heaven, because that's exactly where they will be right at this moment, you can say, Elvis Presley, you're your life was worth living.
But what about, Jimmy, what about the days when Elvis was king of rock and roll, and we were all at the movies watching the Jailhouse Rock, and the Teds were slashing up the seats? What do you have to say about that, as far as bringing people together and meaning love and peace, and that's what music should be about? But you still get this particular side of society who get heavy and start, like, using music as an excuse for violence.
Yeah, well, with all due respect, dear friend, I'll tell you why you're not entirely right there. You see, you've fallen into a popular trap of looking at a violent situation as if people who are bent on violence. That's really who you were speaking of. Well, I remember in the days of those films when they were showing an Elvis picture. I remember, for instance, when Bill Haley was doing his first tour over here. It wasn't a violent situation. When you say they were slashing up seats, it was an exuberant situation. And there's a lot of difference in between people who jump up and down and push and shove out of an exuberance and people who actually go out these days, like they do in so many cases, actually looking for a fight. Those guys weren't looking for fights. They were just exuberant. Now, you could say that a damaged seat because of exuberance is the same as a damaged seat to looking for a fight. It's a totally different thing.
So you're saying, Jimmy, really, let's be perfectly honest, because I've always thought this, and maybe you'll differ from me in my opinion, that the press used that one damaged seat in a cinema to make it a total of a rebellion.
Well,
because that kind of story, Jim, sells papers, doesn't it?
Well, yes and no, but we're in the danger of getting off the track insofar as it was the exuberance that caused the damage. Now, in those days, people didn't go around looking for violence. So this was the first early damages that were ever done by young people, if you look back into your history of young people.
Correct.
And nobody had ever broken a seat before. A seat in a cinema lasted for 500 years. All of a sudden, along came a guy who made people jump up and down. You didn't jump up and down in the pictures in those days. But all of a sudden, along comes L and Jailhouse Rock, and people couldn't contain themselves. They just couldn't sit in a seat when that electric music was going on. So they jumped up and down, they danced in the aisles. Those seats were probably 20 years old anyway. So if anybody leaned against the back of them, the bolts would come out of the floor. Next minute, the seats are over. All of a sudden, somebody who didn't understand would say, look, they smashed the seats. I'm telling you, I tell the world, they didn't smash the seats. It's just that the seats got in the way of people jiving and dancing and swinging around and all these wonderful things. So it wasn't a looking for violence situation, not like it is these days in a lot of cases.
It's like filling a bottle with milk. You can only put so much milk in, then it flows over.
Well, I don't know about that. That's philosophy. I'm not strong on philosophy. All I can say to all your listeners, because I want to listen to the rest of your program out, Tony, is that I'm sure that we all feel very close together at a time like this. Obviously, I, together with all the tens and hundreds of millions of other people, would send my condolences to his family. I would send a firm handshake to the Colonel, Tom Parker, also people like Todd Slaughter, who've worked so tremendously for Al, and the people who've brought the magazine out, and everybody. We're all very close together, and it rises above words. It rises above words into feelings, and all I can say is that we're going to listen to Elvis's music until you go off the air, and I don't think that a lot of us are going to get a lot of sleep tonight. And all I can say, in final, is that the good Lord has got a great new recruit for his hordes in heaven, and just now the L is tuning up there, and he's going to give them some real old concerts, baby. And when it comes for our time to go to heaven, then we've got a lot of things that we're looking forward to seeing, and L is going to be one of them.
Jimmy, thank you for being here. I'd just like to say, long live the King, and long live Great Britain's first disc jockey. Good night, Jimmy.
God bless.
God bless you.
Make a regular date.
Make a regular date.
With 208.
With 208.
The ring-a-ding swinging station of the stars.
Well, I'll tell you what, my show ends at 5:15 in Luxembourg. That's 3:45 if you're listening in Great Britain. And this is Tony Prince just catching his breath after arriving in the studio at 10 minutes to 12 our time, 10 minutes to 11 your time, and being told this ridiculous news. And talk about crying in the chapel. Well, I don't know about crying, but on my way home this morning at 4:45 before sleepy Luxembourg wakes up, I'm going to go into a little chapel I know and say a prayer for a man who is me, and a man who is you, and a man who, you may not believe this, but helped to form society. And he probably means more to me today. I wouldn't be talking to you now, I'm pretty sure about that, if I hadn't have had Elvis Presley inject me with some of his enthusiasm for music and life. So tonight I'm going to go to a church and I'm going to pray on the death of Elvis Presley that long may he reign in heaven and in earth. And now, my very, very dear friend, coming in on the line, Mr. Todd Slaughter. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning, Tony.
Well, first of all, Todd, my commiserations to you. You must be feeling quite destitute this evening.
Yeah. In fact, I feel so sad for all the hundreds of thousands of fans that we both know.
Yes.
I'm very concerned how they're taking the news, and I think probably what Jimmy said a few moments ago, was great.
Well, I mean, nobody could have worded it better, and that's why I was so very anxious to catch him on the phone. And, he's the first disc jockey and the number one disc jockey. He just says everything right, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But, Todd, how does this affect you? I mean, I'm amazed, for starters, that we've managed to get through to you on the phone tonight, because I believe you've been quite inundated with calls, not only from the fans, but from the press as well, right?
Yeah. Well, we got the news, I guess, at the same time that everybody else did over here on ITN. Yeah. It was the very last item that they put out, and as soon as they put it out, they denied it. But then I think it was one of the news agencies rang me and confirmed it, and it's been quite hectic ever since.
So every newspaper in the country's been looking to you for quotes, and now Radio Luxembourg, your old mates out here, are looking for quotes, Todd. First of all, the fan club. How many are in the fan club at the moment?
12,000.
And as you've already said, they're going to be feeling pretty bad tonight. Have you had calls from tonight? Have you received personal calls from some who happen to have your home phone number?
Oh, yeah, there's been a lot. I'm sure there's been a lot that have not been able to get through, and I'm sorry for them that they haven't been able to get through. But I hope this message gets through now. That we don't want any of them to take it so to heart, that just to remember Elvis as he was, and for all the joy and entertainment that he's brought them over the years.
You can't... Now, Todd, you and I both know how loving these people are, and how deeply Elvis has impressed them in their life. Do you fear that maybe one or two of them might take it too seriously, and because Elvis meant everything in life, might try to do something silly themselves?
Well, I hope they don't, but I share the same fear. You see, several hundred or several thousand to some extent, but probably several hundred real fanatical fans have nothing else in their life but Elvis Presley. Rather like a fan that follows a football team that they dedicate their entire life to. It's nothing different. It's just that they've chosen Elvis Presley to be their hero.
Yes.
And it's them that have lost the greatest part of their life.
What are you going to say to these people, Todd, if they think of reaching for some tablets tonight or doing something extremely silly? Have you got any message to them?
Well, I think they just have to remember the love that they've had from Elvis. And if Elvis was around now, or if Elvis is looking down from heaven now, they must realise that Elvis doesn't want them to do anything silly. So they have to take it to themselves to realise that because Elvis Presley's died, it doesn't mean that they have to do anything silly.
Can I be, not philosophical as Jimmy was saying I probably was trying to be. I wasn't trying to be. But maybe we could equate this with the death of Jesus in many ways. I'm talking now about the love the disciples had for Jesus, because I really look on Elvis fans as disciples, because they are as intoxicated with love for Elvis as the disciples were for Jesus. And what I would say, without wanting to sound too corny, is that perhaps the fans could bear in mind that although Elvis died yesterday, we are here on Earth, and maybe we can help to prolong and strengthen the name of Elvis purely by being around and being continually loving and endorsing the name that Elvis is, not was, but is still king. So that is my message to the fans. If they're thinking, oh, Elvis is gone, I'm going too, stick around here, because there's a lot of dissenters out there who don't believe in Elvis Presley. So the best thing to do is stay here with us on Earth, with the Elvis Presley fan club and the people who love Elvis as much as they do. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I'd echo those thoughts. I've often thought that if in 2,000 years' time some excavators from another planet or whatever uncover hundreds of fan club magazines and copies of Elvis Monthly, it could be like finding the Dead Sea Scrolls again. It could be the same sort of interpretation put on that so many millions of people followed an entertainer and took it into their life to make that entertainer part of their own lives. So I don't don't think it's wrong to draw any similarity, because it's the same with any act. The adoration that fans give to that act is real, whether it be the basic heroes or Cliff Richard or the Beatles or Elvis Presley. Their love is true. They've followed that star. And I don't think there's anything wrong with drawing any comparison, because to them it's their sort of religion anyway. My main concern, my main thought ever since hearing that news is really for the fans that have given so much devotion. How are they feeling tonight? I'm sure they're so distressed. And they will be for many years to come. But they've got a lot to remember. They've got a lot to thank Elvis for, because he's brought a lot of life into their own life, which could have been very, very quiet.
That's very true. It's a bit heavier than the death of Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran and people like that. It's a little bit heavier, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. You see, the roots of music as we know it today, the pop music, as you spoke earlier on about things that we've spoken about, the birth of the American dream and so forth, when Elvis started in America in 1956, or really started to open up America in 1956, the American dream itself was just beginning to burst. Schools were having car parks built onto them. American youth was becoming rich, and they needed someone to identify themselves with, and Elvis Presley came on the scene. He opened up pop music for every young person, and gave young people a style of entertainment which could never be.
I agree entirely, Todd. Can we just talk about the future for the Elvis Presley fan club? What does it mean in those terms?
I'm sure there will be fans forever for Elvis Presley, and I don't think it's going to... Well, I don't think we can talk about harm to the Elvis Presley fan club because of this. I don't know what situation we will find ourselves in a few weeks' time. Probably more and more people will want to know more and more about Elvis Presley, because he grew out of being a superstar. He became the curio that everybody wanted to know more about. The news media themselves generally tried to pick fragments of information about Elvis, but because of the way that he was managed, because he was so secluded from everyone else, nobody really got to know the truth.
That's true. And what about conventions and things like that for the future, Todd? And more important, I'd like you to cover... this is awful asking you on this evening, and I do apologize, Todd, but there's a lot of things listening, and that's why I'm doing it. Your plans were to every year take a bunch of fans to see the man live in concert in America. At this moment, have you even thought about that? Will you continue to do, let's say, nostalgia trips to America, see his home in Tupelo, and things like that? And the fan club, would you just tell us what your future feelings are at the moment?
I think we will have a demand from our members to retrace Elvis's roots in a way that we've never even thought of doing before. So if the fans want to do that, then obviously we can do it. We can offer that sort of service. We have it, in actual fact, we have planned our 21st annual convention this coming Saturday in Nottingham. And for the life of me, I don't know what we're going to do about it. I don't know whether we're going to do it or whether we're going to cancel it as a sign of respect. I really don't know. I have to talk to everyone concerned and see what their feelings are first.
Do you want my opinion?
Yes, what is your opinion?
I would continue. I would go ahead with it. I would go ahead with it because I'll tell you, Todd, that is going to bring people together who are distraught and can associate with each other. And can maybe find some happiness out of this sadness, knowing that, okay, Elvis is dead, but his memory is going to live on through a lot at this convention. Maybe it can be that kind of thing. It's not an easy decision for you, I agree. Maybe you can just run films and play records and have the groups just like you always did, Todd.
Yeah.
I'm sure if Elvis Presley could make that decision for you, he'd say, Todd Slaughter and the Elvis Presley Fan Club Secretary, please continue. And I tell you, Todd, if I wasn't working in Germany this Saturday and contracted to do so, I would cancel everything in my life, but unfortunately I'm contracted and I can't get out of it. And that is sad, because I would have loved to have been there with the first Elvis Presley Fan Club convention after his death, because it's the first of many. I think you're going to go from strength to strength. I think people who've just enjoyed Elvis in the past are going to get together with his memory now, because we know he's not going to come over here. There's nothing to yearn for, so let's feed our anxieties through your kind of promotions. But anyway, that's my opinion. What do you think in your heart you're going to do yourself this Saturday?
I don't know. I think you have a point. I think we're faced with a decision that we know that branch leaders have organised coaches and so forth, and if we do cancel, then we're going to put them to an awful amount of expense, and like most people that run fan clubs, they do it as a hobby anyway, so they're going to be in a very strange situation. I think you have a point. I think we probably have to do it.
Well, you're only 2 full days away, Todd, from that actual convention, so if we can be of any help on Radio Luxembourg, I'll be talking to some of the fans between now, it's 1:30 exactly. I'll be talking to the fans for another 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I'll ask each of them what they would do if they were you. Would they continue with the fan club? And maybe from that you can get a consensus of opinion.
Okay, fine. I'd appreciate that.
Because it's going to be very difficult for you to get that opinion within 2 days. But I wouldn't mind betting that all those fans who are weeping tonight and heartbroken will say, please, Todd, let us all meet together and share in this really, really sad occasion to make it a joyous event that Elvis is gone, but he's going to live on, baby.
Yeah.
Todd Slaughter, on behalf of Elvis and all his fans, our love and thanks and sympathies.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you for the program tonight. It really is appreciated.
It's our displeasure. Good night, Todd.
Good night, Tony.
Radio Luxembourg.
That brings the time to 1:32.5 on Radio Luxembourg. If you'd like to call us, and maybe you've been longing to, but haven't known our number in Luxembourg, well, you can find out in your code book how to phone Luxembourg direct. If you're calling from Great Britain or anywhere else in the world, or go through to the international operator, but the number you ask for or aim for is 4766 441. Now, obviously, you might not get through right away, but if you'd like to put something on the air about your feelings about Elvis, and maybe also help in our poll as to whether Todd Slaughter should run the Elvis Presley Fan Club convention this Saturday. Todd's listening all night, and so's Jimmy Savile, and maybe Paul McCartney, too, because I know Paul's around and about. He's in Scotland, and he may be tuned in, because I know how much Elvis meant to him and Linda. And there's a lot of people listening, so if you want to call us, 4766 441 Luxembourg. That's 4766 441. And I do believe we have a caller coming in right now, and I'm delighted to welcome them. Good morning. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, what's your name?
Jenna.
Jenna.
Jenny Leeson.
Where are you calling from, Jenna?
Leicester.
From Leicester?
Yes.
Again, that's from Leicester. Are you an Elvis fan?
Yes, well, I was, for quite a while. Not for start off, but then I got to like him,
Why did you get to like him, Jenna?
Well, I got to like his record, I like The Wonder of You.
The which one?
The Wonder of You, I like.
Jenna, Jenna, do me a favor. Get somebody in your room to turn your radio off, because it's causing this technical feedback we get when...
Okay,
just turn your radio down, okay?
Yes.
Great. So from what stage did you enjoy Elvis from? After the movies?
Well, yes, when I started seeing his movies on the television, that's when I really got to like him, because I think he was really cute, really nice.
Okay.
I would love to saw him.
Jenna, well, you'd probably just heard me talking to Todd Slaughter, did you?
Yes.
What do you think about the convention this Saturday? Do you think he should run it or abandon the Elvis Presley convention for the fan club this Saturday afternoon? What would you do?
I think he should let it run, I think Elvis would want it, I really think he should.
Okay, that's a nice opinion. That's what I said. But if there's anybody listening thinks he shouldn't, please let us know. Jenna from Leicester, thank you for calling us here in the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. And this is with love from me to all the fans who are feeling very lonesome tonight. Yes, King, the Prince, and all your followers are very lonely tonight. We're getting calls in commiseration form from all over the world tonight on Radio Luxembourg on the eve of the death of the king of not just rock and roll. Everybody said the king of rock and roll. He was just the king of a whole new feeling for life. Elvis Presley. We've now got a caller on the line calling from Malmö in Sweden. Hello, hey.
Hello, my friend. I'm very shocked.
What's your name?
Carl-Erik Jönsson.
Carl-Erik Jönsson, thank you for calling from Malmö. May I know, Carl, when you heard the news and how you heard the news in Sweden tonight?
Well, as you know, Malmö is very close to Denmark.
I do.
And we watch Danish television quite much. And I was watching the late news at 11:15.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard the bad news that the king was dead.
And how did they say it on the television? What did they exactly tell you?
They said in Danish that one of the greatest of rock and roll music has died, and then they had a short story of what he had, all the records he made, and telling, just quoting the telex you have been telling about.
Yeah. The story of his death.
So I myself I remember Elvis Presley. I'm only 22, but I remember Elvis Presley on the walls of my cousins in the 1958 when I was 3 years old.
Really?
And one of my cousins was the fan of Tommy Steele, and the other one was the fan of Elvis Presley, and I remember the big posters on the wall.
And your mother and father, did they like Elvis Presley?
Yeah, my father is around 70 and my mother is around 60, but they remember them quite well because that he was in the 50s, he was, and in the 60s and forever, he was will be the greatest among all musicians, and I think that you compare him with Jesus Christ, and I'm sure that he was a Christ in his game.
I know what you mean.
And I'm sure that, and I completely agree with the Englishman who was on the line a few seconds ago that God has a very good recruit in the army now.
That was Jimmy Savile.
Yes.
Now, you're probably too young to remember Jimmy because he hasn't been on Radio Luxembourg for a long time, but for the benefit of our listeners, Carl, and you included, Jimmy Savile was the pioneer of pop music as much as Elvis Presley was to rock and roll. Jimmy Savile was to pop music here on Radio Luxembourg, the first disc jockey of music.
Well, I remember Radio Luxembourg, and I have been listening since I was around 13.
Yes, well, we're very pleased about that, Carl. Have you got many Elvis Presley friends up there in Sweden?
Well, I haven't any. I don't know any friends in particular. I won't say anything to, but I know that all people in Sweden, even if they don't like Elvis Presley, they knew that he meant a lot of things for young people in the 50s, 60s, and forever.
Great.
And if I could say a few words, just a few words in Swedish, I would be very...
Please,
that's okay.
On behalf of the memory of Elvis, speak in Swedish.
Elvis kommer att leva så länge denna planet finns kvar.
Tack så mycket, Carl. Can I just ask you the question? Now, you may not understand, but Britain has fan club conventions. They have meetings of all the fans every year.
Yes.
Now, I was just talking to the fan club secretary.
Yes, yeah.
You heard it.
Yes.
Now, they're having a meeting on Saturday, and he doesn't know whether he should cancel it or go ahead. What would you do?
Well, life must go on. So keep on with. I want him to keep on with the work, and I'm sure that Elvis would have wanted the same.
Thank you, Carl.
Goodbye.
Hey.
Goodbye.
I think what he's trying to say is keep on rocking, baby.
Radio Luxembourg.
Got a lot of living to do. Up until 2:30 this afternoon. Elvis Presley is dead. This is our commemoration show on Radio Luxembourg. Of great feats, great events, great memories, and 1,000,000 tears this evening in 1977, in a world that is rife with problems of hate and very little love. But a man who brought many millions of people together with his music. If only he'd been a politician through his music. Not possible, maybe. There's a lot of things going to be said, a lot of things could be said, but now let's see what's going to be said next on Radio Luxembourg on the eve of the death of Elvis Presley. We're just putting someone else through on the line right now. Hello there. Hello? Hello, wait a minute. The line, there we go, that's more like it. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry about the delay. What's your name?
Well, I'm Ria Ranga, and I'm from Holland.
You're calling from Holland, Ria.
Holland?
Now, Ria, I know there are many, many thousands of Elvis fans in Holland because many of them have come on us on the trips to America to see him.
That's true. I've been on a trip twice, in 74 and 75.
Fantastic. So I saw you in 74.
That's right, and also went to the convention of Radio Luxembourg.
You came here to the Grand Duchy. Well,
Yes,
Ria,
that's right.
you must be feeling very heartbroken tonight.
Oh, we're terrible.
How did you hear the news in Holland?
Well, I was driving in my car, and when I turned the radio on, I heard an Elvis Presley song, and then on the Dutch news, they told me about his death. And we all are very upset here. It's sad.
Do you have a fan club in Holland, Ria?
Yes, that's right.
You're a member of it?
Of course, I even are a member of the British fan club.
Now, what do you think about Todd Slaughter's performance this Saturday? Should he go ahead with the convention or
Yeah,
not?
he's got to. I mean, Elvis' death is terrible, but still, with his songs and his records, everything, he's gonna be alive for us. And I think it's a good idea of Todd just going on. Even, we're going on a trip to the States. I've been twice. I've seen Elvis performing. And, we love him.
Do you think you would still go to America on one of the trips if Elvis wasn't going to be at the end of that trip?
Yes, I'm sure.
Did you-
Even my mother, she's a big fan.
Ria?
She's a fan.
Ria, I just thought about something. Did you go on the 75 trip when you got to Vegas and he wasn't performing because he was ill?
That's right. We went, and then one of the Dutch fans, Joe, went back to Memphis and sent him his flowers and his love. Yeah.
And nobody on that particular trip saw Elvis?
No, nobody did. It was a big shock to us, but...
Still, everybody had a good time because Elvis was
Oh, sure they did.
the tying force of you all.
People all together, all the fans, that's wonderful.
Okay. Ria, thank you very much for calling from Holland, and my commiserations to you and all the fan club members in Holland.
Okay, thank you very much.
Say goodnight in Dutch.
Nou, wel rusten. Iedereen het beste voor Elvis.
Long live the king.
That's it.
Good night, Ria.
The Royal Roller, Tony Prince.
You've just tuned into Radio Luxembourg to find and seek confirmation of the disastrous news the world has heard today, and I'm sure there is no radio station, no television station, no news media who hasn't today reported on the death of a mere truck driver. Because that's what Elvis Presley was, as Jimmy Savile pointed out. Elvis Presley, the son of a poor sharecropper, a man who used to rent a field from a landlord and try and earn a living from it, gave birth to twins, Elvis Aaron Presley, and I think his brother or twin was called Jesse. I have no information here, but Jesse died at birth and Elvis rocked on. So there you go. A little lad born in a two-room shack, and believe you me, it was nothing more than a shack. Everyone who's been to Tupelo to see the monument they've built to Elvis, which is simply maintaining the property, will realize that everything is possible in the society known as America. A guy who died today will be mentioned in every possible conceivable journal in the planet Earth. China, Russia, I'm pretty sure everywhere in the world. No one, least of all Radio Luxembourg, will accept nothing less than a tribute to Elvis Presley. And tonight on Radio Luxembourg, we're playing Elvis music right to our death at 4:45 British time, 4:45 European time. And I hope you enjoy it. We're inviting you to call us here in Luxembourg, and the telephone is jammed, so maybe I shouldn't tease you by asking you to call me at Luxembourg 4766-441. But you're very welcome to try. Now we have another caller on the line. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
What's your name?
Les Bridger,
Where are you calling from, Les?
Denmark.
Another caller. Well, we've had Sweden, now we've got Denmark. You sound English, Les.
Well, actually, I'm from London.
You're in London. What are you doing in Denmark?
Well, I'm an old folk singer from way back, and my first chance at learning guitar was from hearing Elvis Presley.
So you learned the chords of C,
Heartbreak Hotel, man.
C, F, and G, huh?
Yeah, sure.
So you're still making a living from the influence Elvis put on you?
Of course I am.
What do you...
Well, I'm living in Denmark for the last 3 years,
Yeah.
and I learned by living in the folk clubs in England, but I first learned guitar from listening to him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to folk music because that was all I could do, and that's where I thought he was. He's the people, you know. He's folk music.
Well, he's basically steeped in country, which is very folky, isn't it?
Yeah, really. Well, it is folk music. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, a lot of that early Sun stuff, which we've been playing tonight.
Yeah.
And what do you think about this situation tonight, Les?
Yeah, well, wow, I couldn't believe it. I was playing in a club tonight, and the boss came up to me and said, "Hey, Elvis Presley's dead." And I said, "Go away, go away."
Yeah, you said to him, what's the end of the joke? Like you expected it to be a joke with a tag on it,
Of course. And then I came home and I switched on Luxembourg, which I always do because I can get it very clear in Denmark, much better in London.
Good.
And all of a sudden there was Elvis Presley, and he really was dead. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for the Daily Mirror to send me a telex saying, sorry, rub that out, it's a mistake. But it can't be now because we've talked to too many people who've heard it from so many sources around the world.
Yeah.
And if it is a sick joke, it'll be the happiest sick joke I've ever heard in my life, but I fear it's very true, Les.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway,
Well, nobody's happy.
what's your second name, Les? Give yourself a plug.
Bridger, Les Bridger.
Les Bridger, and you're a folk singer in Denmark.
Yeah.
Reaping a living
Yeah, sure am.
from the influence of the king.
Yeah.
Okay, Les,
Really?
lovely. I could ask you, because Todd Slaughter's listening, and you've probably heard why I'm asking you, should the fan club convention in Great Britain, which was planned for this Saturday, continue, or do you think it should be cancelled?
Do you think there's a better word in the English language than definitely? There must be a better one.
Nice
I
one,
think
Les.
they should hold that convention, man, and I wish I could be there. I really do.
Well, I'll tell you what, Les, if you can't make it this year, come next year, because I'm definitely going to be there. There'll be no contract signed, and I'll be there, mate.
Yeah?
Long live the king.
Okay. good
Long
luck.
live
Yeah,
Les in
sure,
Denmark.
man.
Good night, thank you. Don't. One of the many classics from Elvis. That wasn't a stupendous, blatant hit record, but was nice. I'm going to play his new album for you in just a moment from now. That's his brand new album, and I wonder whether they were his last recordings. I'm pretty confident now he's probably got so much stuff in the can you wouldn't believe it, and that for the years ahead of us, we're going to be listening to new Elvis albums, rather like Buddy Holly, but more so because I'm pretty sure and confident that Colonel Tom Parker, being the astute businessman he is, will have kept all the tapes that Elvis did and the songs they never decided would have made good singles then, but of course we're going to get them all in the future. It's a whole different ball game now. Johnny Rotten's took over and Elvis has left us. And it's just unbelievable. If you just joined us on Radio Luxembourg, I don't have to tell you that Elvis Presley is dead. I'm quite sure that the whole world has informed you in some way or another, whether through another radio station somewhere, or television, or a friend, or a phone call. I'm sure you've already heard. But perchance you haven't heard, I will once again tell you, Elvis Presley died yesterday, 2:30 in the afternoon, and they feel it was through a heart attack. There will be a post-mortem, but he was found dead in his Memphis home, which is Graceland's, which lies on a tiny hill at the end of a boulevard, which the council of Memphis decided to call Elvis Presley Boulevard in appreciation of the man. And now the whole world tonight salutes him. Here on Radio Luxembourg, a commercial radio station, we have cancelled all programming format for Elvis. And not only that, our sales department, our managing director, have agreed to cancel all commercials. £10,000 worth of commercials as our tribute to the king, to the man, to Elvis.
Radio Luxembourg.
Well, the telephone calls are still coming through nice and ripe, and Elvis Presley fans in memoriam are calling Radio Luxembourg tonight to talk to Tony Prince. That's my name, and I equate myself with Jimmy Savile as being his #1 DJ fan, without a doubt. He meant so much to me, and I know he meant so much to everybody, and we're not going to go on about it, but what we're going to do now is we're going to play his most recent live recording. It's his new album, which entered the top 50 albums this week, I believe, and is now surely going to become a #1 as the months go by. Welcome to My World, Elvis Presley, it's called, and it was recorded live at the Madison Square Gardens on June the 10th, 1972. So the Colonel's kept this one in the can, and we have to ask ourselves, how many more things has the Colonel got in the can? It doesn't really matter, we'll just keep on buying. Here's Elvis Presley. We'll talk to some more Elvis fans on Radio Luxembourg right after he sings Welcome to My World live with J.D. Sumner and the Stamps.
208.
Well, there it is, the first track on Elvis's new album. Now, as the show commences, we're going to hear every track of it, and then we'll get back into some of the old rock and soul Elvis Presley music later on. But now I think we're going to open the line once again, and if you want to put your own personal commiserations on the radio, if you're an Elvis fan, and you've bothered to phone us here at Radio Luxembourg, then I'd love to talk to you. And have you got a caller, Mark? Believe we have. So right now, we're going to put somebody on the line, and I say, good evening, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
What's your name?
My name is Ulrich.
Ulrich, that sounds...
U-L-R-I...
I know how to spell Ulrich. Is that from Germany?
No, I'm from Basel, in Switzerland.
In Switzerland?
Yes.
Are you calling from Switzerland, Ulrich?
Yes, I'm in Basel at home.
Mm-hmm. Are you an Elvis Presley fan?
Yes, I am an Elvis Presley fan, but I like more the earlier songs.
Yes, the early Elvis.
Yes, yes.
Well, many of us do. There's no getting away from that. But, Ulrich, how did you hear the news in Switzerland tonight?
Oh, yeah. Well, I listened it at midnight on the German radio. Because in Switzerland we have 3 radios: the German radio, the France radio, and the Italian radio.
And the Radio Luxembourg, of course.
Yeah. Yes, and the German Swiss radio, it has no news at midnight because they closed down then, and I listened to the news at the German radio.
Mm-hmm.
At the Südwestfunk,
yes.
Because Basel is on the German, Basel is near Germany, and I listened to that Elvis Presley is dead.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what they said in German, huh? What did they exactly say on the German service?
Well, they said that Elvis Presley, they have John Esposito find him at his house in Memphis, Tennessee, and then at 1 o'clock they said it again. And then they played some Elvis Presley records, but only 2.
I see.
Yes, and now I listen Luxembourg on the HFM band because on medium wave the reception is not so good.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I thank you very much indeed for calling us from Basel in Switzerland, Ulrich. And may I say to you, as I've said to many listeners tonight, long live the king. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
And long live your love for him.
Make a regular date.
Make a regular date
With 208.
with 208.
The ring-a-ding swinging station of the stars.
And so finally the show came to a close. It was dawn in Luxembourg as I walked through the park and down the boulevard to my hotel. On the way, I stopped at a bar for a much-needed drink. I had 2 large whiskies. I then went to my hotel, and I called my wife Christine in England. For 30 minutes, she consoled me as I cried like a baby.
Red is for stop at 208 on the dial.
This is Radio Luxembourg AM and FM. And so we come to the end of our programs in English for this morning. We sincerely hope that you've enjoyed the music you've heard and that you'll rejoin us again this coming evening. We broadcast with an omnidirectional power of 1,300,000 watts AM on 208 meters, 1440 kilohertz in the medium wave band. Radio Luxembourg can also be heard at 49.26 meters shortwave. And our FM frequencies are 88.9, 92.5, and 97. On behalf of the staffs both in Luxembourg and London, this is Bob Stewart, wishing you God's blessing and peace. And a good night and good morning, wherever you may.